Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to get started right on time because we recognize that this is probably a busy week for everybody. And we're just so glad that you've decided to join us tonight to hear more about the Bronfman Fellowship and have your questions answered. So my name is Becky Vorwinda. I'm the Executive Director of the Fellowship. I'm also an alumna of the Fellowship. And I'm going to get into a few housekeeping bits first on the next slide. We are recording this session, so hopefully everyone is comfortable with that, but please be mindful that we are recording. We ask that you mute yourself if you're not speaking. But I should also say that we love to see faces as we're talking, so we're not just sort of speaking out into the void tonight. So feel free to keep your camera on if you feel comfortable doing so. And the chat feature is enabled. You'll see in the chat area at the bottom of the screen that you could send questions at any point to Bronfman Fellowship, which is Leah. She's one of our alumni, and she's helping us out tonight with the technical stuff here. You're also welcome to send questions to me, Becky Vorwinda, and when we get to the Q&A, we'll take a look at those questions. We'll also have space for people to actually unmute themselves and ask their questions directly, which we really love. So that's a little bit of housekeeping, but moving on, it's a pleasure tonight to also be sharing time with Jake Marmer, our Education and Programming Director, and I'll give Jake a moment just to say hi, so you'll hear more from him soon.
Hi, folks. Looking forward to today's sessions, and like Becky was saying, we encourage you to turn the cameras on, so we have a sense of people we're talking to. Always more fun that way.
Great. So we'll get right into the meat of things. We're going to be sharing the program overview with you. We also have two alumni, or actually two fellows. They're 2021 fellows with us this evening who are going to be able to tell you a little bit about their experience. We'll talk a little about the application, the process, and some tips for that. And then we'll really reserve a good chunk of time for question and answer. So that's what you can expect for today's call. I wanted to start by sharing a little reflection that I always think about when we now are at this point of being able to do live sessions like this, and really can provide, answers immediately about what the fellowship is about. I think back to when I applied for the fellowship and I got a brochure in the mail. And something that really stood out to me in that brochure, and that I think still speaks really volumes about the fellowship, was one phrase. It said, "The conversations go well into the night." And if there's one image that we can leave you with as you think about what it could mean to be part of the Bronfman Fellowship, I hope that might be one of the images that stands and sticks with you, in the sense of this program is a program where you will be with a group of peers and also a group of educators and thinkers who relish the chance to talk about the big questions, and where it's not reserved in just a classroom setting. In fact, our model does not have a classroom model to it. It's really about what happens in all the in-between times, and what happens, the sort of sparks of joy of talking and engaging and laughing together, and being in community to explore those big questions. So I wanted to just open with that, because that to me is sort of at the heart of what the fellowship experience is. On the next slide is our commitment to inclusion. And if you're on this call, you belong. We hope you belong, and we believe you belong in the Bronfman Fellowship. Our model really is grounded in a desire to build a community of pluralistic young people. And what that really includes is having the widest spectrum of identities represented in the fellowship. We work really hard to make space so that all voices are heard, and to provide support and connection, so that as the Jewish community has shifted and changed over time, that our fellows reflect that, and that all of our fellows can have real deep respect and interest in one another's backgrounds and stories. And I welcome questions, especially towards the end when we have our Q&A, if you'd like to hear more about ways that we've been working to ensure that different identities and different stories are supported, respected, and valued in the fellowship. On the next slide, you will see just briefly our impact framework. And a lot of people ask, and we got a few questions on the registration for this Zoom. Who's a Bronfman Fellow? What are you looking for? So one of the things I would say is we are looking for people who love to learn, who are interested and passionate and curious. We're looking for people who are interested in other people, who have their own points of view and their own things to share, but equally are just deeply interested and curious in others and want to build community, want to get to know how others think. We're looking for folks who are creative, who have a creative spark, think outside the box, have means of expressing themselves in a wide range of ways. And again, kind of going back to this idea of those conversations well into the night, hopefully they're grounded in courage and in a seeking of moral clarity. Our impact framework is both about who's coming into this fellowship, but also ways that we hope to deepen and enhance what you can then bring to the wider world. This year, we are recruiting for our 36th cohort. So the fellowship is entering its 36th year, an auspicious a number for double high for the Jewish community. And so we really are so proud, if you take a look at the next slide, to just give you a little quick window into the places and the ways that our alumni are making a difference in the world. Some of our alumni are working actively and professionally in the Jewish community, but certainly not all. In fact, that's not the objective. The objective in our model is really that alumni end up doing a wide range of things across every sort of field and sphere in professional spaces, and then likewise in volunteer spaces and in their own creative practices and lives, and that they reflect the values of pluralism and a passion for Jewish learning and a passion for connecting and knowing Jews across difference. We have nearly 1,400 alumni between our Israeli and our American programs. And just so you don't think that all of our alumni are old, not that the people on this page are necessarily old, but on the next slide, you'll also get a little window into some of our more recent alumni and the ways that they think about what Bronfman means to them and feel inspired by the fellowship community. You'll be receiving an email shortly, I think within the next week, that will include a lot of the pictures of the people on here and also pictures of some of our other alumni. We have a pretty wide group of alumni that have volunteered this year to be available for one-on-one calls with anyone who's considering applying to the fellowship or in the midst of applying. And I encourage you to take them up on this. They're happy to answer your questions, to tell you about their experiences. And these are some of the ways we hope to help make this a smooth and enjoyable process for you. So on the next slide, you'll also just get a little window or picture into what is the fellowship year, and then I'm going to be handing it over to Jake. But the fellowship year begins shortly after the selection process concludes. So in the spring of your 11th grade year, and we have a few virtual experiences that allow us to start to build community, but then we have an opportunity to be together in person in an immersive summer experience. And this year, our immersive summer experience will be a return to Israel, which has been our typical travel experience for the fellowship. And you'll get to hear a little bit from Beverly and Yossi, our fellows who had a domestic experience and there's many parallels, but nonetheless, we are very much looking forward to having the chance to return to an immersive experience in Israel. During your 12th grade year, there is also virtual programming, as well as 2 in-person seminars, one in the winter and one in the spring, that take place in North America. We'll talk a bit later about our interactions with our Israeli fellows, but I just wanted to note at the outset that there's both an opportunity in the summer to spend time with our Israeli fellows, because we have a concurrent program of Israeli young people who are Bronfman fellows. And then likewise in the winter, those individuals come to the US, and there's a chance to connect with them here as well. And the fellowship really is far beyond this initial fellowship year, though that is the starting point and the launching point for something very special. But our alumni maintain a very close connection, and there are a lot of wonderful opportunities to stay part of this network as time goes on. So on the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Jake, and he'll tell you a bit more about what to expect in the fellowship programming itself.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you for your late night eloquence. It's really late on the East Coast where you are. You sound terrific for 11 p.m. So thank you for that. My name is Jake Marmer. I'm Education and Programming Director for Bronfman. I'm an educator and also a writer and a poet, and I'm really interested in this encounter of ancient Jewish texts and contemporary Jewish culture, and I really believe in meeting the contemporary Jewish culture, not only in kind of like as an observer, but also in active contribution to it. I live in Los Angeles, California, as of a month and a half ago. So on these sorts of calls, people often ask what the day is like. And on the slide here, you obviously are seeing, some components of a typical day in Israel, like what that looks like. But as Becky said, the real experience that happens, it happens oftentimes in between these sorts of sessions. So we may have, a special speaker who's a world-class scholar, or a concert with a terrific contemporary artist. But what it may end up being the real highlight is the conversation that happens afterwards on the bus, or on a walk to the lunchroom, where fellows have really memorable conversations with each other and faculty members about the experiences they had, and process those things together. So these are some of the components, and you can kind of like see the modalities that we have, and I'll speak to those in just a little bit. But on the next slide, you will see that kind of the core of the Bronfman experience is a time and space and an opportunity to ask the big questions. And some of these questions are here on the slide in front of you, and we come at them through sacred classic Jewish texts, but also philosophy and poetry, and also just the experience that the fellows themselves bring to the community. As Becky said, we're committed to diverse cohorts, and it's really important that everybody's experience is held up, and it itself becomes an important source for the learning as it happens, and as it is brought. And these questions, it's not just important to kind of struggle with them seriously and deeply, but also to just take real joy in them, and to kind of gradually get to really understand and internalize that these questions are crucial to one's humanity, to one's Jewishness, and being with other peers, other Bronfman fellows, and stellar faculty that we have, and discussing these things, it just becomes a source of real enduring pleasure, and that's a huge part of the program. So on the next slide, will see some of our faculty members, and faculty members are really one of the most important assets of the program that we have. These folks are the current faculty members. The roster will look different next summer, but you can have a sense of just of the caliber of the folks we get. We have rabbis, we have university professors, artists who are rabbis, who are university professors, any kind of entangled, unimaginable combinations of these things. But what's really important is that they're thought leaders in their field, and also real role models in their communities. And they become role models for the fellows, and these kinds of relationships really endure. Each of the faculty members teaches a shiur, which is essentially what we call like a deep dive, week-long deep dive into a specific topic. They're listed here in red. You can sort of surmise maybe from the title a little bit of what the topics are, and also just kind of see the breadth of the experience that we offer. Well, it would have been enough if we had just the faculty members who are so fabulous, but we also bring in special speakers. And on the next slide, you will see just a few of the names of people we brought in past few years. And we attempt to represent a real broad spectrum of political beliefs, religious beliefs, contemporary scholars, philosophers, artists. Some of the folks you see here, you can get a sense of the sorts of speakers we bring. And here in this slide, especially wonderful to share two of our alumni of the program, Mati Friedman and Dara Horn, actually for the same year, both became really accomplished and important writers. And that's always a pleasure to bring back alumni to the community to speak to our fellows. So, and again, whenever a special speaker comes to meet our fellows, a huge part of the experience is processing it afterwards and discussing it and really teasing out what happened there. And we do that together as a group, and faculty members participate in it. On the next slide, a slide I'm very fond of, you will see a group of visiting artists who joined us this past summer. So this is a new part of the program that we're slowly piloting and exploring and building together. This last summer, we really in earnest launched this. So 3 contemporary Jewish artists, really accomplished and kind of happening artists who are making Jewish art now, and are recognized for it, joined us for half of the summer and led workshops in music and theater and dance, and I led the poetry workshops, and that's a really important part of the program now. We believe in contributing to the Jewish culture and encountering it in all of the ways. In the next slide, you'll see one of our fellows. Mayan is holding some work that she's made, and you also see kind of a large group art, visual art piece that was made in the shiur of one of the faculty members who was kind of teaching this approach to text analysis that also involves making visual art as a mode of analysis. Really cool. Cutting edge stuff, but there's quite a bit of art. Obviously, nobody needs to come as an artist or have an artistic practice. It's not about learning scales or a specific brushstroke. This is about building a community and trying maybe something new, and just encountering awesome artist educators. Okay, I'll say a few things about the next slide too. Essentially, in addition to Bronfman Fellows in North America, we also have a cohort in Israel. And the AMI team, the Israeli fellows, have a program that's somewhat different, but in some ways similar, 2 hours. And the encounter between the two cohorts is kind of like a great educational experience that both groups learn a lot from. One thing is learning about Israel from books or media or other kind of resources, and it's a whole other thing to spend time together and have deep conversations and notice similarities and also some really kind of profound differences, and that's a very important part of the fellowship. So I think I'm gonna stop talking for a little bit, and as Becky was saying, we will have time for questions, but I really want to now pass the spotlight over to our current fellows, illustrious West Coast California fellows, Beverly and Yossi, and Beverly is in here in Los Angeles, and Yossi is in Foster City. So we got South and we got North. We're covering covering a lot of California here. So they will tell you a bit about their backgrounds and a bit about their experience. Beverly, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I look very serious in that photo. I promise. I know how to smile. So I'm Beverly. I'm from LA. I'm a senior at Marlborough School here. My family is modern Orthodox Jewish. I'm still kind of figuring out what kind of Jewish I am. And I do ensemble theater and movement theater work at my school. And I also love baking. And I'm also a huge Phoebe Bridgers fan, and that takes up a lot of my time. So I think like Becky and Jake said, existential questions is such an important part of the Bronfman experience. I think kind of when I think about my most Bronfman moment, it was actually a workshop that Becky led, where she asked us, we were all sitting in the Beit Midrash in the synagogue with our journals and with this journal actually. And she kind of asked us, what is a personal paradox in your life? And personal paradox is kind of, that is an existential question. And I'd never thought of something like that before, kind of the way that I could have in my life so many narratives at the same time that they could be paradoxical. But I sat there and I tried to figure it out. And I don't know if I did figure it out, but it was so special that I had the opportunity to think about it because I'd never thought about that question before. And afterwards, we also spent time talking with other fellows. And we went and we talked for 25 minutes and we split up the time evenly and we just sat and we listened to the other person. And I was paired up with a girl in my fellowship that I hadn't spent that much time talking to. I didn't know her super well, but we found this space in ourselves to be super vulnerable with each other, which I think also kind of sums up the Bronfman experience, which is just a shared language of vulnerability and closeness, even with people that you haven't had the opportunity to know as many like factual things about them. I think I can tell you probably most of the other fellows on my programs fears and dreams and what they want to do with their life, but I don't know if I can tell you how many siblings they have, just because I feel like there's this idea of Bronfman that I experienced with, which is there are things that are more important than that's like the factual knowledge that people usually get from each other on their first meetings. And I think that kind of just sums up for me what Bronfman was and how it was important in my life.
Wow, I don't know how I will follow that. I think that was a really like perfectly captured so much of what was so special and unique about my Bronfman experience too this past summer. So I'll try and give a slightly different angle on it. But anyway, I'm Yossi. As they're from Foster City, it's a little bit south of San Francisco. I go to public school, Aragon High School, and I'm involved with I'm the president of my USY region and involved with various current event club at my school, and I enjoy in terms of like academics. I love bio. And before Bronfman, I feel like I had not been exposed to any really pluralistic environment like Bronfman is. I had enriching Jewish experiences, but with mostly like peers who were very similar to me or like-minded in their Jewish practice. And so that's where Bronfman really differed from my previous experiences. And so if I were to choose, I guess, one moment, I think one moment that sticks with me the most from the summer is the day we spent together called Tisha B'Av, which is one of the major Jewish fast days of the year. And so we experienced this together. Some of us had no idea what it was and had never fasted. Some of us had been fasting for it for our entire, since we could fast. And so I think what was so unique about this is that I had observed this fast day before and fast on my own or with family or even at camp, at summer camp. But what made this so unique was being able to have this day where, hey, there's absolutely no distractions. You know, there's no eating, there's no thinking about anything like that. And so it really brought us down to the bare bones of what Beverly talked about. But to be able to experience it with people who had such a variety of experiences, and we got to kind of combine all of our different maybe favorite parts or most meaningful parts of this fast day if we had experienced it before, or we got to kind of experience the learning with the other fellows as we experienced it. And so I think that was another component, kind of speaking, you know, Beverly spoke about the really rich conversations and depth of conversation. So this was just really great, like, is I think a symbol of the pluralistic environment as well.
Thank you both. And in our Q&A, which we're just getting close to, you'll certainly get a chance to ask Yossi and Beverly more. I love the images that both of you offered as some windows into the experience thus far. On the next slide is just a quick overview of our application process. And on our website is really everything you could possibly imagine details wise related to the dates of the fellowship, information about the applications. We also just posted some short little videos on the website to help sort of unpack each of the pieces of the application. But I do want to make sure that everyone on this call knows that the application deadline is December 8th. And we require in our application some short essays, two letters of recommendation, one of which should be from a teacher that that knows you in the classroom, but the other can be from any adult that has a relationship with you and knows you well. We prefer, of course, that it's not a relative, but otherwise it can be any kind of person that knows you well. And we go through a review process that's very thorough. We have multiple readers of the application, and so it does take us a bit of time before you'll hear back from us, though if you have questions after you've submitted, you're welcome to be in touch. But mid-January, you will hear from us, and those folks who make it to the next round, to the finalist round, will have a virtual interview with me and Jake, which is super fun. We love to get to know candidates and have great conversations. And so the interviews will take place in late January through February. And we notify acceptances in early March. So that's our time frame. And, you know, we really want to make this as smooth of a process for you as possible. So don't hesitate to be in touch as you're going through the process. On the next slide, you know, just this is more a prompt for myself really, but I'll use this just as a way to say a few quick words about the application itself. The main thing that I want to emphasize here is that what we're most excited about is hearing your voice and getting to know how you think, getting to know the kinds of questions that animate you, getting to know why you're involved in the things you're involved in. Though the application does ask, for example, for school transcript, our reviewers are not sitting there and scrutinizing grades. That's not what we're most interested in. What we are most interested in is you as an individual, as a thinker and as a person, and as someone who cares about the activities and things that you're involved in. So again, you know, the real focus, if I could give you advice, is to work on your essays in a way that allows you to help us see who you are, and to also make sure that you ask for recommendations from people who really know you. It does not matter if the recommenders know anything about your Jewish background. That's not important. What's important is that they can really speak to you and your character and who you are. There's also a very short video. I don't remember the exact time amount, but it's like less than 2 minutes. And again, we're looking for something that's unscripted, does not have to be beautifully edited, but rather just to get a little taste of you sharing what animates you. So those pieces of the application are how we get a small window into you. Naturally, there's often a very high number of applications, and so the more that you can help share the things that you're involved in, not just the things you're involved in, but the reason you're doing what you're doing, or you think about the things you think about, that's going to stand out for us. So we're now finally at the point of our Q&A, and I do hope that this initial introduction helped to answer some questions that people have. But now I encourage you, we'll sort of close out of the slide deck, and we'll open up to answer questions. So if you have a question, you can use the raise hand function. I think that might make it easiest, and we'll do our best to call on you, but you're also invited to put a question into the chat. You can either put it in so everyone can see it, you can put it in so that it's sent to me or to Leia, and we will do our best to kind of host this show and pass the question to the right person. So I like that Jake liked my little joke there. Yeah, so feel free. You're also welcome to unmute if that's easier for you. How many people are in the program every summer? Great question. So each year there are 26 fellows selected from North America. And then, as we mentioned earlier, for our Israeli fellows, we have 20 Israeli fellows each year in the Amitei Bronfman cohort. As people are thinking about their questions, something that I thought could be helpful also, if Beverly or Yossi just want to add a word about this, Jake in the presentation talked about our faculty, and I thought it might be useful to say, beyond what you had the chance to learn in your sort of small group discussion and learning with them, what stood out to you around what the access was to our faculty? And then we'll kind of see as some more questions are rolling in. Yossi, you want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, I can kick this one off. Right, so I would say, in addition to what Becky and Jake described as all the incredible learning we do with the faculty, one thing that really stood out to me is, like Becky said, how accessible the faculty are, and not just like accessible, like they're there. Of course, that makes for a better relationship, but they're really open and not there just as a teacher figure or as a mentor, which both of those they are, but also as another friend, another person to have conversation with. And I feel like at Bronfman, whereas at school many teachers might be there just teaching you, or they're there to kind of educate you, with the faculty at Bronfman, it was constantly like an open conversation, and us sharing our experiences and hearing from them, and in discourse with them, not similarly to how we were with the fellows. And that was just really awesome to have that with people who had so much experience as well.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I think there's just this level of wanting to share their knowledge. Like, I know a group of fellows and I were really excited about some Kafka that we had read during one of our seminar sessions. So we started a Kafka club with Dr. Parks, who was one of the faculty members for our fellowship year. And we kind of sat in the library and we just read Kafka for an hour a couple times during our summer session. And he was so willing to just sit there and read Kafka with us. I don't know, it was my first time encountering Kafka. So there's I had a lot of questions about like his background, and he was just sat there and he answered all our questions. And he also just talked to us about what these words meant to him. And we spent an hour analyzing one single line of a poem. And it was really fun and really exciting, which I don't know. I did not think Kafka could be super fun and exciting, but it was.
It's a certain kind of fun.
Right, right. And there's other kinds of
Specific kind
fun
of fun.
too in the fellowship for those that might be like, well, so there's a few questions that popped in, and then I also see someone raise their hand. You know, one of the questions was about the dates. So on our website, you'll be able to see all of the dates, but just for those who want to hear this, June 27th to August 1st is the Israel seminar, which was one of the questions that was asked. Another question that was asked, which I'm going to broaden. So Alana, thank you for the question about, you know, you said, you know, are the majority of the fellows involved in Jewish youth groups? So my first answer is no, but my second answer is actually, or my second sort of framing for your question is, what kinds of diversity did Yossi, you and Beverly see in your cohort when it came to Jewish identity and Jewish sort of connection or community? And maybe you guys could say a little bit about that too, about how wide of a spectrum that was. Beverly, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So for me, something that was really exciting is I'm Native American. I'm a member of the Muskogee Creek tribe, and I don't encounter a lot of other Jewish teenagers of color in my Jewish space I'm a part of. And at Bronfman, I was able to talk to and connect with a couple other Jewish teenagers of color, which isn't something that I really ever get to do. And I think that there's such a diversity, not only just like literal, like, I don't know what most like ethnic diversity, but also just thought and willingness to have conversations about race and about like gender and about all these topics. And everyone had very different views and very different moral views, but everyone was really willing to kind of expand those. And that was like, for me, I think kind of was something really important and made it so comfortable to be a part of the fellowship as someone that like sometimes cannot feel comfortable in Jewish spaces. But at Bronfman, I really felt like home and like very comfortable being myself there, which was really great.
Yeah, also just to add on a bit, like in terms of the going back to the youth group question, like the diversity of Jewish backgrounds and upbringings and observance, there was like a huge range. And personally, for me, I'm the Jewish like camp and youth group and whatnot environments I've been in the past. I've been in an environment of people who have come from similar families or like Jewish families with just similar Jewish traditions or observances as me. Yet at Bronfman, I found myself like I was the only one who kind of had. By the way, I didn't mention I come from like a conservative Jewish upbringing, and so I found myself like surrounded with peers who each have different Jewish identities, and as much as we might have tried to like fit each other into the like boxes of like reform or conservative or modern Orthodox or whatever, it was like so much more to that, and so many types of Jews and Jewish teens I didn't even know existed in terms of how we each identified with our Judaism.
Thank you. Alana, I'll answer your other question shortly, but I see Ariel has a question, and feel free to unmute Ariel and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. When you meet with applicants, is there something that you see in common with them that really sparks your idea of Bronfman material besides those things you talked about earlier, like people who love to learn or those who have interested in others and like creative desires and community builders?
Jake, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I would say like what's really important, and this maybe I'll just get to the interview process is when Becky and I meet people for an interview, it's also very much about the quality of the conversation we can have, and we're really not looking to grill anybody or like really like categorize or whatever. It's about the quality of a conversation and a curiosity that we kind of just attempt to create in a conversation. And if people are into doing that, then that immediately becomes interesting to us. I mean, I remember Beverly and Yossi, like I remember our interviews, and like we talked for a long time, and like going over time, you know, just all Leah too, you know, I'm sure. So you know that like that's really important. And as far as the application goes, I think one part of it is obviously you know, just as Becky said, kind of explaining to us why you think the way you think, what you're really truly interested in, and what happened, and kind of like giving us like good anecdotes to kind of understand it. But also, you know, speaking for myself, I appreciate like a sense of humor, somebody who isn't just like listing accomplishments and like the list of things that will go on some resume, etc. But a sense of a real person that's fun to be with, and fun in various ways, like in Kafka ways too, and other ways as well.
Yeah, and you know, a cohort of 26 fellows means there's a great mix of introverts and extroverts and different passions and interests. You know, Yossi mentioned biology is a passion of his. You know, some fellows that would not be their thing, but it's actually so exciting when you're sitting and talking and you get to learn about an issue or an idea or a subject that is really interesting to someone else. So there isn't one type at all that gravitates to this experience, or that you know, kind of appears as the quintessential Bronfman Fellow. Um, One of the questions that was asked in the chat was about other Israel trips. I'll just say first of all that I can't speak specifically to another program. So there was a question about the Diller program, which I believe is a wonderful program, and we have some great relationships with their team. But I can say more broadly a little bit about what makes our model special. And so in that sense, part of what I want to share around how we approach our program is that though we do, in this case, get the chance to return to an Israel experience and situate a lot of the content and the exploration in Israel in the summer, we are not a touring program. There's a little bit of travel in Israel during the time that the fellows are there, but we often say to fellows afterwards that we really encourage them to go back to Israel again, hopefully many times if they so desire, but to go back and travel around and see things, and spend more time immersing themselves in trying to understand and learn about Israel, because the fellowship, our primary focus educationally, is really much more around exploring these big questions. Israel's a great place to do that, as is North America when we have our seminars here in the States. But Israel and knowing sort of the ins and outs of Israel is not our primary focus. And so a lot of other Israel trips, you kind of get it through the name, Israel trips, that is the main thing that's happening on those trips. On the other hand, we're really proud of the ways that the fellowship experience, especially getting to know the Israeli fellows, does offer a very unique and special window into the questions that animate the Jewish people, and in that sense, also our relationship and our questions around Israel and connections to Israel. The virtual programming was another question that came up, and essentially sort of once a month, give or take, is when during 12th grade there's a chance to come back together in between seminars. And Beverly and Yossi, I think, have had maybe 2 so far of those, and I'll just speak for you and say that I'm sure you enjoyed it, in the sense that you miss your friends, and it's just like, it's nice. It's nice to see them, and to have a chance to have some continuity with the learning and the connection. But we also really understand that senior years is a busy time, and so it's a relatively minimal commitment in between each session. And feel free, others, to jump in, or if anyone has another question, we're happy to answer those.
Sure. Can I ask a question?
Please go for it.
What takes place during the winter and spring seminars? I know in winter you meet the Israeli fellows in America, but what goes on during those seminars?
Good question. Jake, you wanna? Yeah.
It is a good question. I had like a quick pang of like, yeah, what happens? Oh my, what's going to happen? But we really kind of continuing a lot of great conversations that started in the summer. In the case of this year, the schedule is slightly different, but you're right. Normally, on a regular year, Israel come in winter, and that's just a part of the encounter. And then also in the spring, we're kind of like wrapping things up, and we're there for 4 or 5 days. And Leah's year, we had what we call a vision seminar, where we talked about the concept of visions, from kind of religious and spiritual ways to political and social and artistic visions. And that was kind of like a general umbrella and a way for us to talk about like what's ahead. And so it's really the same kind of combination of great learning and also catching up. As Beverly and Yossi mentioned, fellows come close, very close, and that's really important to us that happens. And so being back together again and reflecting together on the growth and the year as a whole, that's some of what happens. Robbie, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and likewise, there's speakers, there's site visits. We have been really working very, very carefully and closely since the start of COVID to continually find ways to make sure that fellows have the opportunity to be together as a community and to make sure that they have access to in-person experiences as much as possible. We have a medical advisory team that's been working with us, and thank goodness so far we have not had to cancel our programming. In fact, we've really been able to be creative and expansive in many of the things we've been doing. So, as these things unfold, as sort of Jake said, like, wait, what do we do in these seminars? We have been making shifts and changes, and yet the core of what we're doing, which is building community and also really providing a space for creative and intellectual and Jewish identity exploration, that has still continued, even as sort of the formats keep shifting a little bit as time moves along. Feel free if you have a question. It's great. We love hearing your voice. And if not, I'll maybe prompt Beverly and Yossi if there's any like last thoughts or words or something that you think might be helpful to share.
Sure, I can share one little thing. I think first, piggybacking off of a little bit of what Becky was saying about the program in Israel and how it like differs from other programs. We were not in Israel this year. We were domestic at Isabella Freeman Retreat Center, but I think really for me, what made this program so unique, in like simply put, is the relationships, both with like the other fellows and with the faculty. And I think it's something that like until I experienced it and experienced it with other fellows, it's something I didn't even know that I was like missing out on or was not experiencing or did not have that like depth of relationship or discourse like with friends back at home or friends from wherever. Not to say that I don't like talk to my friends, but it's like something that I just didn't even know I was missing, and that I can't. It's hard to verbalize like before or after what I did or didn't have. But I think some of the examples like Beverly shared, and all those like constant, like at Isabella Freeman, we had this purple trail that we would like just like a little mile loop. It was like constantly just going on walks with other fellows, talking about whatever it was, whether it was, debriefing from the session we just had or, talking about what our home lives look like or, or just walking in silence and like being with each other in silence. I think all those types of encounters with the other fellows was something I never knew I was missing, but now I'm so glad I had the experience to have.
I just wanted to like add something on about like the fun of Bronfman and like the joy of Bronfman and not just like the learning part. I think that like one of the really special things about Bronfman is that like every single part of it is seen as important. So like sitting and talking to your roommate or like I don't know, for me, like doing my roommate's makeup or doing our makeup together before Shabbat is like just as important as reading or as like doing the seminars. And I think that really speaks to just how every single part of Bronfman is a learning opportunity and a way to get to know people and a way to kind of learn about yourself and then also learn about how you want to see yourself and how you want to see yourself in relationship to others in the future. And I don't know, we had a lot of dance parties in the library at like very late at night in during my fellowship year. I'm sure Lucy remembers. And it's just there's a lot of fun that happens, but it's fun that's meaningful and fun that's like just really special. And I don't know, I've never experienced any joy like that in the way it feels before. So that was great.
I feel like dance party at the library should be our motto or something. Thank you. Or maybe a poem. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We really look forward to your application, and we hope that the process is itself introspective and interesting for you. We hope that the materials that we have on our website at bronfman.org, as well as emails that you can receive as you go through the application process, are also helpful to you. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there are more questions. And just really thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your night and look forward to hearing more from you soon. Have a good night.